Welcome to the Happiness Podcast. I'm Dr. Robert Puff. Why am I not happy? Whose fault is it? This is a really important question that I'm going to try to tackle today. Because when we're struggling, we want to know why. Why is this happening to me? And I think more importantly, is there anything I can do about it? And the answer is yes. There are many things that we can do about our unhappiness and to make it better. But before we go there, I want to talk about what happens in life. How did we get to where we're at? And how do we undo the things that are causing us to be unhappy? There are two things in life that we really have no control over. The first one is the genetics that we're born with. We may have a genetic predisposition towards depression or bipolar personality disorder. We may be born blind, or we may be born really healthy with an incredible athletic ability. Some of our genetic predispositions, like our eye color, we of course can't really change, but other things can be influenced or modified as we get older. With that predisposition towards depression, we can learn about skills to how to overcome depression and thus lead a happy, more peaceful life. The other thing we can't control is the environment in which we're born into. We don't choose our parents. We don't choose the way they're going to interact with us and treat us. Those are not in our control. But the choices we make are how we respond to the genetics and to the environment that we've been born into. And how we respond completely dictates how our lives turn out. And if we learn skills that help us with whatever we've been born with, the environment or the genetics, then our lives can turn out well. If we make choices that don't help us with what we've been born with or our genetics, then we can have very difficult lives. So here's the bottom line. If we're not doing well after we grow up and now have the ability to choose our life, then guess whose fault it is? It's ours. And I don't mean that in a harsh way or a mean way. I mean that in a good way for one reason. And that reason is that if our lives aren't going well, no one can stop us from having a good life as long as we're willing to make changes and improve our lives. That's in our control. And that's the good news and the bad news about happiness. If we're unhappy right now, it's our fault. And if we want to get better, it's completely in our control. The truth. Both sides. We can be happy, but it takes work. And for some of us listening to this podcast right now, it can take a whole lot of work. And I deeply know that some people listening to this podcast right now are clearly going through horrific times, or they were raised in environments that were just awful. I get that. But the good news is there have been people who have gone through tremendous trials in their life, and they have done well. And as long as there are a few people that do well, that's a possibility. We can have beautiful lives no matter what, but it takes work. And for some of us, it takes a lot of work. But having an unhappy, difficult life because of our upbringing, because of our genetics, is also very hard. So I want to talk about what keeps us from pursuing happiness. Why don't we all just have happy lives? I mean, if I'm arguing that our happiness is in our control, then why don't we all choose happiness? Well, let me explain. I want to talk about the two types of journey that people get on in their lives. The first one is the journey of a difficult life. They have difficult genetics or they have a very difficult upbringing. And in these situations, what happens is there's pain. There's a lot of pain. And as they get older and they reach the point where they can now do something about that pain may be a very difficult upbringing where they are sexually or physically abused, or it could be a psychological disorder like borderline personality disorder, where it causes them to act impulsively or hurt other people in ways that cause them a great deal of pain. Well, in both these situations, there are so many different paths that they can go on to get help. There are support groups, there's therapy, there are meetings they can get involved with. There's just so many different options that we have to get better. But given the severity of our upbringing, it can take a lot of work and a lot of effort. When I meet people that are doing well, exceptionally well, particularly if they've had a challenging background, you can see that it took a lot of work for them to get there, work and courage, and they just kept working it until now their lives are flowing well. But to get through a very challenging upbringing or a tough genetic situation, it is a lot of work. It's definitely worth it, but it is a lot of work. And two things have to happen for this change to occur. One is people have to be exposed to the help. They have to know that there's help out there. They may not even know that there's things that they can do to improve their lives. And I don't know if you know it, but it's the main reason that I create this happiness podcast, so that people can know that there are things that they can do to improve their lives and get better, no matter what. No matter how challenging, no matter how difficult our lives are, we can, if we work at it, all have beautiful lives. But then there's the second danger, and that's addictions. Because when we're in pain, and if we're in a lot of pain, addictions can work, particularly drugs, or even alcohol, or sex. There's so many different forms of them. Work, relationships, food, they, in the short term, make us feel better, and they work in the short term. We can be having the most horrific day. I mean, truly, sleeping in our own feces and being beaten up by people and being called horrible names. But as long as we're able to get our drug, like crack, like heroin, in our system, we'll be okay for the moment. Of course, it's a horrible existence. But why drugs or addictions work so well is they do temporarily take away the pain. And when there's a lot of pain, sometimes we just want immediate release. And this journey of happiness, lasting happiness, is not immediate and it's not necessarily fast. It's a slow path towards happiness, but it's a lasting path. And that's what makes it hard. That's what makes it a tough decision, because there's so many different options to be happy right now that we can choose. But these addictions that do work short term, in the long term, destroy our lives. And instead of fixing things, make things worse and worse. So at some point, we may say, I need help. I'm going to change this. I'm going to stop turning to my addiction and start working towards being happy. Because each moment we choose whether we're going to get on the path of beauty, of happiness, of peace, or the path of pain and suffering. It is a choice at that moment. And there are people out there that can help us. We may have to reach out to them, but they can. We can have beautiful lives. It just takes work. And it's easier to make those decisions one decision at a time, instead of thinking of all that we have to go through. What we do is we focus on, okay, right now, I am in pain. What can I do that's good for me to get better. And then we just begin to work at it. And let's say we are on prescription medication because we need to be. Nonetheless, we need to still work on the emotional, psychological, spiritual aspects of being well so that we can make sure that we're overall working towards being happy and finding peace in our lives. If we truly want to be happy, then it will be within our control to do that. It just takes work. And the wonderful thing is, we can all have that beauty and peace in our lives if we're willing to put in the work and the effort. If we're not, then we get that life. But in either way, it is a choice. And we have to keep choosing to get help and work on ourselves until we find that our lives are going really well no matter what. Now, other people out there aren't born into tough environments or don't have genetic predispositions that are hard for them. Their lives seem to be going pretty well. Then why aren't they happy? How come their lives don't work well? It's actually in many ways pretty simple. We are very much conditioned by our environment. And our environment is our family, our upbringing, the media that we watch, the friends we hang out with, the music that we listen to. All these things shape us. And no one's out there making money and promoting how to be happy for the most part because there's really no money in it. Not like a company's going to make money if you're happier. They're going to make money if you spend money on their product. And so they're not going to talk about how to be happy. They're going to talk about deficits. And if you buy their products, you'll be better. And then you buy their product and you're not. Or you'll work towards goals like having a family, getting a job, and think you'll live happily ever after. And then the bumps in life come. And they do come. Maybe you didn't have it like other people when you're a child, but then you get them later. Someone you love dearly dies. You lose a job. You get a health crisis. The bumps just come later. And because you haven't developed the skills of happiness and resilience, when they come, life just begins to fall apart. And it doesn't go well. So it takes work in either case to truly find happiness. The world in and of itself isn't in any way going to suggest how to do this. But if we seek it, if we work at it, and if we realize it is work, but it's an attainable goal for every single one of us, no matter what, then that's where we put our energy. We say, I am so committed now to having a happy life, and I'm going to work on it until my dying breath. And really, that's it. That's the key to having a beautiful life. You have to commit to it. You have to work at it. You have to keep working at it to your dying breath. But if we do, then what happens is our lives get better. We have to be very careful of addictions. We have to be very careful of what we expose ourselves to. And most of our time is going to be steeping ourselves into this, learning the skills of a beautiful life and staying away from mindless, silly activities that truly waste our time. I'm not trying to be judgmental. It just means mostly we waste our times on things that are meaningless. If we want to have beautiful lives, it is work. It is effort. But we can do it. We just have to commit. That's where it's our responsibility. Each day we have to commit to a better life today. And we learn the skills. We learn about ways that other people talk about how to be happy. And then we work those skills. One of the biggest things I teach is non-attachment. That's one of the pivotal things of happiness. But it's work to develop that skill. Another one is meditation. I deeply believe developing a meditative practice is a key essential to having a beautiful life. And again, that can take a lot of work and time. There are things that I talk about in this podcast that will make our lives beautiful, and there's different aspects to happiness. But if we learn these skills, then we'll discover that if we're unhappy, it really is our fault. But if we want to be happy, it's completely in our control. We do have to work it, and it does take effort, and we have to work it every day. But that's really the key, that if we work at it and keep working at it day by day, we will get better. Our lives will improve. There's nothing that can keep us from being happy but ourselves. When we give up, we can be quite unhappy. But if we don't give up, if we keep working this day by day, what we'll find is our lives will just keep getting better. It's a commitment, it's effort, it's courage. But if we put forth that work, then what we'll find is we can all have beautiful lives. No matter what's happened to us so far, no matter what we're going through right now, our lives can truly be beautiful. And we can find that with our effort, we will find happiness. Thank you for joining me on the Happiness Podcast. If you are finding these episodes helpful, I would love for you to share your experience with others. The easiest way for new people to listen to this podcast is just refer them to www.happinesspodcast.org. That's happinesspodcast.org. Or if you want to do more and leave a review, on that site you'll find a Yelp link, a Google Plus link, a testimonial link, or perhaps even the site you're listening to this podcast on. Often you can leave reviews there too. The reviews are an awesome way to encourage people to start listening to the Happiness Podcast. And until next time, accept what is, love what is. Do you ever wonder why some companies do so well, grow, and just seem to keep coming up with great ideas and keep expanding, while other companies are permeated with negativity, lawsuits, employee turnover, and just overall unhappiness in the workplace? Whichever corporate camp you find yourself in, or somewhere in between, the key to any company's ongoing success is to invest in and help their employees perform at their peak performance. There are very clear and specific things that people can do to perform well at work and in life in general. This is the focus of my podcast, and it's also the focus of my work. Being at the cutting edge of any market is sustained through investment in training employees how to perform well. But sustained growth and productivity requires specific psychological tools in order to continue to perform at peak levels. This is where I can help. I've been studying peak performance for over 30 years now, helping people all over the world. And there are very specific things that have to be maintained in order to sustain this level of performance. When companies invest in their employees are invested in them. Unfortunately, it's quite common for companies to be doing exceptionally well in the marketplace, but for unknown reasons, key employees make poor choices, leave the company, or start struggling in coping with stress-related illnesses. Companies that do well know their business really well, but human behavior works in mysterious ways unless you've been trained to understand the causes and cures of underperformance. If you're a forward-thinking company, perhaps it's time to think about giving your employees skills that may really help them perform well at work and throughout their lives. If you work for or manage a company, and you're ready to learn the skills in order to survive and thrive in any market, in any conditions, or in life in general, I'd love to help. These are the skills I've learned. These are the ones I'd love to bring to your company. True lasting success has to be seen from a broader perspective, not just monetary. And if you're ready to bring about these changes, that's where I can help. To learn more, go to www.successbeyondyourimagination.com. That's successbeyondyourimagination.com. And whether we're at the doorstep of retirement or have many years to go, may we always be growing, and be developing our skills not only as successful employees, but as successful human beings.